Well, hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another live gig Q&A call. I am your host, James Kronk, and thank you so much for joining us. It is September 30th, 2025, and I'm thrilled to have on a fellow Canadian who has been making a mark for himself in the United States and other parts of the world for many, many years. In the food and beverage space. And you know, I will tell you that if there's one topic that we get consistently asked about here at Golf Industry Guru and within all of our platforms with Kronk Group, it is that on the challenges of food and beverage. And so we have been very fortunate to seek out and find some great food and beverage people that have achieved significant accomplishments. And today's guest is no different. Today we are going to get a chance to chat with Chef Duane Keller, who's had a lengthy career delivering unbelievable food and beverage experiences. And I can't wait to have him join our platform. So Scott, without further ado, let's bring on Chef Duane and welcome Chef Keller to the Golf Industry Guru podcast. Thanks so much for joining us.
Hey, great. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. And I appreciate everybody joining us today, and hopefully we can help some of the operators.
Now, Chef, we were introduced by Diana, I guess, from Golf Kitchen, who's such a wonderful resource. And you know, when I started looking at your lengthy experience and resume and your journey and your travels, you know, from Canada to the US and beyond, I'm just fascinated by the variety and the different types of facilities and organizations that you've been with, and more importantly, the accomplishments, the people you've served, the awards you've been recognized with, the success you've had. And I know you're likely going to say it's about a team and many other things, but please don't limit yourself, Chef, in giving our listeners a little bit of understanding about your journey, because I think it's a fascinating one.
Well, thanks for asking. Where do I start? So my parents sent me over Niagara Falls in a barrel. That's how I got to the United States. I was raised by wolves in upstate New York. No, I'm just kidding. I was originally from Saskatoon. My mom said I was the first saddle block baby born in the world, and she was right. We had doctors from all over the world, and I always say it's kind of an experiment gone wrong, because you got to have a good sense of humor in this business, right? At the age of 3, my dad joined the New York Rangers. So he was playing in the original 6. So he played with the Rangers, and Hershey Bears bought him. He had the first contract in the AHL, played for Hershey for 14 years. So I grew up in Hershey, and what a great hospitality town that is. Great schools, super people. You know, the town that I live in now really feels like Hershey to me, because, you know, everybody waves and friendly and really just a small town. So Hershey is just full of from the start. You know, Milton Hershey always said it's not what you leave your children, it's how you leave them. And everything he did was for others. So he built this, Milton Hershey School, and educated all the kids that were orphans and then didn't have parents. And we did a lot with the school. My father, he knew he couldn't play hockey all his life, so he went to hairstyling school. And
Wow.
We did really well. And my first analogy about food cost is this. It's as simple as a new bottle of shampoo. So when you buy a new bottle of shampoo, you use 4 to 6 times as much shampoo as you need. But when you get down to the bottom, you use a dime's worth, and that does the job. So in when we get into food costs, talking about food costs, there are many things that we do as leaders to control the food cost and help. One, education, helping others understand the value of food. And you can do that very easily. I'll give you an example. I worked in a lot of fine hotels, and they had large inventories, but the chefs were really good. Old school guys that really knew their craft, knew their business. And if you had 20 cases of bacon, you likely had cooks burning bacon,
Right.
But if you had what you needed, like 4 cases, 6 cases, whatever you just needed, they understood the value, and they would, treat it with care, like a little baby bird, just picking it up. Going through Hershey High School, and then I went back to Canada to play hockey. I was on a team as a young guy, 13. I tell my son now, he's 10. He's a terrific baseball player. I said, son, at 13, I was on a team that won a gold medal. And, I think about that, just being surrounded by the best. We were a small town in Hershey. Only 2 teams from the U.S. were ever invited. It was Boston and Hershey. We'd go up there and fill our gloves with candy bars and throw them out into the stands. And the Quebec International Tournament, teams from all over the world. So back to Canada, I went to play hockey, and I started in kitchens when I was 13. This will be 50 years for me in kitchens. And honestly, I say I'm only halfway there because I'm physically fit. I've got a good head on my shoulders, a lot of knowledge, and I just really love what I do. So I went back to Canada, and you can't make this stuff up. It's just wherever you go, there you are. And if you do good things happen. So I go back up to Canada to play hockey. I end up working in a really nice hotel with the chef of the year, Gerald Erler. He was 3 years in a row out of the Delta Valley in Calgary. I lived right across the street. I just walked across, and I worked for him, and he was very intimidating guy. Wow, it was just learned so much from him. I guess I did a pretty good job because they sent a team to Vancouver for the World Expo. Got to work at an Emerald Park, 85, 86. And there was some pretty, big time notoriety with that. And I just kept my head down and worked. We worked from open to close. We took an hour off, went outside, kicked the soccer ball around. And, when the chef asked you something to do, you said, yes, chef. And you just hustled all day long, 6-7 days a week. So from Vancouver, I told my dad I was coming home. He said, how are you going to get here? I said, I'm going to ride my bike. I used to race bicycles. I rode my bike from Vancouver to Seattle, flew to Philadelphia, put my bike back together and rode to Hershey. When I knocked on the door, my dad answered the door and he said, well, shit, that didn't take you too long.
Right.
I rode my bike across from the whole country. He asked me, do you want to open a restaurant? I said, not in Pennsylvania. But he said, okay, well, I said, I'm going to Florida. I went to Florida because a good buddy of mine that I went to school with, he said, you got to come down to Florida. You're going to blow up. I went down there. In one day, I had 6 jobs. And
Wow.
you only have one job in what we do.
Right.
You got to focus on what you're doing. So I took the best job, which was Hawks Cay, which was a very, very nice resort, mile marker 61 in the Florida Keys. And you can't find a place to live down there. So the chef said, you can stay in the resort. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. I just get up and walk down the hall and go to work. So everywhere I've ever been, and I've been all over North America, the first week of February, somebody would show up and say hello. So I'm down in the Keys, and the waitstaff come back and they say, Chef, you have a visitor. And I'm like, who would that be? Nobody even knows I'm here. I just came from Vancouver down to the Florida Keys. Nobody even knows where I'm at. It was my father just coming in to say hello.
Awesome.
And the Florida was and is now really booming. Florida has some of the greatest clubs in the country, big initiation fees, really nice clubs. A great, country clubs have really benefited from COVID. I hate to say it,
yeah,
but they have, and people have always associated their clubs with their second home, and sometimes even they spend more time in their club than at their home. So we are really in a great position to take our food operations to the next level. And if I could, I really kind of boil things down and make it simple. But if you're in a country club, like I just took over a new club, Belle Meade, fabulous club, opened in 1969. And the membership is just wonderful. The people were wonderful. The staff is great foundation. And so my job is to elevate that and to, of course, make some changes that are going to impact both the quality of the experience and the cost, because this is as simple as it gets. We do what we do so that we can reinvest into what we're doing, so that we can do more. We can provide more. We can provide more value. We can provide more wows. We can provide, I'll give you an example. At Belhaven Country Club, very large club, 1,000 members. I arrived in Alexandria to 14 open positions. And I just posted on social media, I'm hiring. People came from all over the country. Even one guy flew from the Philippines for an interview. I hired him. He was very good. The 14 open positions, I had a stage for 2 weeks of 20 people. And Bob Gazella, who I still speak to often, was the general manager. He said he'd never seen anything like that. And we're in a time right now where it's very difficult to find staff. There are many, many people out there that have the passion for food and beverage. You just gotta get out there and let them know you're there. And so we filled those 14 positions. We were off and running. And I'll use Belhaven as an example because it had a very large inventory, over $100,000 of food. And with that much inventory, it's hard to keep things fresh. It's really it's interesting because the staff would actually go in like we do at the grocery store. You lift up a couple of cases, you grab one from down at the bottom. That's not fooling anybody. That's just, I guess, human instinct. That's what was happening at Belhaven. So for 3 years that I was there, I rotated the menu every 3 months. We never had an inventory over $30,000, really depending on what day of the month we'd have to count. And the food was ultra fresh. We had a farm, we had beehives. We had, just like I go back to the Ashby Inn, a very small country inn known for food, daily menu. You got to look at things every day. So as a chef, operator, GM, you got to look at things. You can't just assume, or you can't order from your seat. I'm out there going through everything, touching the food, checking the coolers twice a day, really putting some focus on the rotation and the quality.
So, Chef, you talk about obviously inventory management, and you also were talking about some of the the clubs, and the importance right there about making sure that you have funds to reinvest in the experience. You've cooked for presidents, you've cooked for Julia Child, for goodness sakes. No doubt you've seen lots of country clubs that, oh, there you go. What does that say?
That's the jacket I wore when we did Julia Child's 90th birthday. It was
Oh, that's awesome. I love it. I love
wine
it.
dinner for 150.
What an experience that must have been.
9 courses.
Wow. And so, what I find when I'm talking to what I find when I'm talking to club managers or board presidents about their challenges with food and beverage, it's either, look, we don't have we have a consistency and a quality problem, or we have great food and we're losing our shirts. And so what's the kind of mind shift, when you go to a club, are you always believing and have the belief that it can be a profit center from a food and beverage standpoint? There's the lifelong debate of food and beverage being an amenity service, an amenity at a club, where it's acceptable to, have a 40% food cost, and it's acceptable to lose hundreds of thousands of dollars on a few million in sales. Are you always of the perspective and the opinion that you should be able to run a kitchen and a food and beverage operation, at either net zero or a profit?
Really depends on how you want to look at, through the P&L, the budget. Different clubs have,
Yes.
very high monthly minimums. They have high membership initiations and everything that, it's really up to the GM to steer that ship, but I believe that a chef should be running his operation like a business so that he can give back, because especially nowadays, I mean, with the COVID and the inflation, I mean, I'm known in this country, or at least I was, up in Northern Virginia, Washington, D.C. for seafood. I opened a great big restaurant at Gaylord National called Moon Bay, and it was just sustainable seafood. Well, now it's almost impossible to get or to source, or afford some of the products that I worked with. So the way the chef should look at things is obviously theoretical, actual, and include everything when you're costing your menu out. You got to think about all the Q factor, the little things that add up. It's tough. I'm net zero. That's how I go into a place. I go in the first month, Belle Meade, I just don't spend any money. I use all the products up that we have, and then we start with a new menu. And so the new menu will be for 3 months, and I'm going to learn as much as anybody else, because the favorites, the traditional things that they may have liked before, we're going to learn a lot in the first month. But one thing I can guarantee is that people are going to really be pleasantly surprised.
How do you deal with, and I want to make this positive, because look, we're in a great industry and a great business, and sometimes the 10% is the loudest 10%, right? It's the loudest 10%. But when you are in charge of food and beverage and you're trying to get to net zero, we sometimes have an obstacle of member expectations. The member just paid $50,000 to join the club. They just got their monthly dues cost of $2,700. They only played golf 4 times or went to the tennis court 3 times. So when they come into the restaurant, they want to have a food and beverage experience that the prices are not the same as downtown in their city. Hypothetically, I'm using great generalizations, but do you have a strategy? Do you have a communication? Do you set your pricing. Once again, I mean, you've got to be managing your business incredibly well. But in the club business, we're not always able to charge retail. It's a generalized statement, I know. But do you have a strategy for that? Do you have a communication process? Do you shake hands and kiss babies and explain to people why this month, a Caesar salad the cost of lettuce has gone up 20%, and so we've got to manage food portions? Or how do you manage that?
First of all, your menu is the roadmap to Disneyland. It dictates everything. So my position with writing menus is to under promise and over deliver in everything. There isn't an item on the menu that just fills a space. A good example of making budget. Last 3 years at Savannah Lakes Village, which we had 15 different menus. They're all wonderful. So much variety. That was just being proactive in giving people variety so that they don't, and changing every 3 months so they're not asking for anything. Life is like standing on a ball. If you stand on top of that ball and you keep going, it's easy. It's fun. But if you're just sitting back waiting for things to happen to you, it's not fun. So last 3 years, we never went over budget, ran great food costs, had great value, great variety. And we had 3,600 members. So we had members come from all over the country, and they would hold the menu up to me and say, "How do you do this?" And I'm like, "It's very hard. We work hard at what we do. Every ounce counts. Spatulas, every bit of what you talk to your staff about." And it's not all about food costs, because it's not, we're so much more than just food costs.
Yeah.
But if you can run good costs, you can reinvest that into your operation, and you can really have fun. You can
when you go into a kitchen, you go into a club like Belle, Meade, or you go into, many of the others that you've gone into, and once again, I'm generalizing. But, there's an expectation, obviously, of an experience, of fine dining, of quality. They don't bring in a new chef and expect the quality to go down. They bring in a new chef and expect the quality to go up. They expect the experience to go up. They expect the creativity to go up. Where do you find in your experience, where's that low hanging fruit that you find when you go into a club that allows you to kind of see? You talked about inventory. What are some other areas, or you talked about menu, quality menu product, every ounce counts. I love all those things. Are there some other areas in the whole dining experience that you feel that clubs don't pay enough attention to in order to run an efficient kitchen or restaurant dining experience that is going to help them get to net zero?
In my 50-year career, I've worked in fine hotels, fine restaurants, and really good clubs. The clubs are just last one to the ball. It is just recently clubs have really got a lot of attention, and they've got some really great chefs. Country clubs have really changed a lot, I would say, over the last 10 years.
Yeah.
And this may sting a little bit, because I can walk through any kitchen and I see stuff all over the place. Opportunities I call low hanging fruit. Get back to the craft, get back to doing things, stop buying stuff that's already prepared. Everything tastes better when you make it. You cook with your heart, you make it. You wrote I walked into Belle Meade, I wrote all new menus, all new recipes. I've got 90,000 recipes of mine on an external hard drive. I didn't even open it up. I just did it from my heart. And so I got a whole new book. We start tomorrow, And when I say this stings a little bit, chefs sometimes hold a little too close to their chest. It's okay. Ask for help. There's a lot of people out there helping each other. I like helping people. But I can walk through any kitchen, most any kitchen, and see all kinds of low-hanging fruit opportunities. I'll give you one example. Whipping butter. I worked for a company that had 15 restaurants in Washington, D.C. And the procurement guy came to me and said, "What are you doing down here?" I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "You're not going through any butter." I said, "Well, I don't think peel and butter is at the level of where we're at." So we whip butter and we pipe it out. It's very nice. Everybody loves it, and we save them a little aggravation. So he goes, "Well, send me the recipe." And I call it Canadian butter, because you just whip. It doesn't matter if it's 30 pounds, 50 pounds, 10 pounds. You just whip that thing going until it's about to melt. It goes white, and you can see the temperature's going up a little bit. It's getting a little softer peaks. You take a cup of ice and throw it in the butter, and that thing just blows up. It goes tenfold. And then you pipe it out and you got butter service. Now, he said we saved $30,000 a year on butter in each of the 15 restaurants. I worked for Sutton Place Gourmet. We had the nicest grocery. It was Sutton Place, Balducci's, and the Heyday Market. When my aunts and uncles would come from Canada, I had an account. I say, "Go just pick out whatever you want." They would just cry because of the cheese department. We had $80,000 worth of cheese. The wine department, the fish, the meats, everything was incredible. Well, I noticed the produce guy, anytime there was a tiny little blemish, he would just throw that thing into the dumpster. And he did it in front of me, knowing that would aggravate me, right?
Right.
And I just went to the VP and I said, "Look, Steve, we need to send out a memo that says all blemished produce goes to the traiteur department." And he figured out it saved like $300,000 a store, something like that. There is opportunities wherever you go. I just posted a little vessel of pommes frites, making your own French fries. It's so simple and it's so good. And the French fries that we had there were $2 a pound. And we make our own now. This 20 cents a pound. And everybody loves them more. And,
So obviously, I think that's another nugget. So, because you'll hear, and maybe you won't hear it regularly, but I certainly have heard it in a room of chefs talking about the efficiency of pre-buying, suppliers. We'll get into suppliers in a minute, but you're known for, chef, kind of farm to table experiences, and obviously that's what you're talking about, right? And you see the quality and the consistency and the cost efficiencies of farm to table. How can a typical, how can a golf course that doesn't have 2,000 members, how can a chef that's not, doesn't have 20 people on staff, how can a smaller facility embrace? Well, first of all, can you just explain we all think we know what farm to table is, but let's just talk a little bit about the concept of farm to table and what that actually looks like in reality. And then what are some of the steps that a smaller operation could do or should look to do to embrace kind of farm to table mentality?
Farm to table, in my opinion, it was 1990. I was at the Ashby Inn. I bought everything within 50 miles. I was lucky. I could write a daily menu, and we had incredible, within 50 miles. We had Mrs. Fleischman and her little game hens. We had, morels. The guys were bringing in from from the woods. We had I had 150 tomato plants. We had watercress growing on the stream. I think my food cost was like 10%. Just we did what we could get our hands on. So what that does is it dictates your seasonality, dictates what you have to serve. I mean, there's nothing worse than somebody serving asparagus right now. There's so many other vegetables. Vegetables will save you a lot, and you can be very creative, get back to your craft and be creative. And but remember, vegetables are still like $4 a pound. So there's still like the price of chicken. So you got to be careful. I would say the farm to table movement is just what it's about making the ingredient, the product, the star, and the chefs do it. The chefs, mention where they get everything from, what farm, what river, what's, whether it be fish or produce or meats, we have a little farm here, Dent Farm, and we're buying all our beef from them. It's wonderful, and it's sustainable and local.
We talk about the fact, I've said this before, in that it doesn't matter how big or small your restaurant is. There's no need to print a menu in January and then replace it, next January. It's like, menus should be changing based on product, based on pricing. Your pricing's got to change. I think that's one of the basics of effective kitchen operations or effective culinary operations is to embrace the fact that your menu's got to change. And then, of course, you have to train your members, your customers to embrace change, right? It's just like, I know you wanted a shrimp salad sandwich like you had it 20 years ago, Mrs. Smith, but, the reality is that, I don't make shrimp salad sandwiches on brown bread, with 2 pounds of mayonnaise. Pardon me. But is that obviously part of your approach, is kind of, ensuring that everyone understands and that your team understands, like you said, you're not standing still on a ball, you're moving forward, and you want them to embrace change. And that includes a new menu, that includes new items, new features. You were just sharing with me offline that you were creating your new menu that you're launching tomorrow by, implementing features and getting feedback. And, that's the easiest way, obviously, to find out what are your rock stars versus what are your horses, and vice versa and everything else. What's your advice on creating an environment with your team? And is it just managing people and just communicating it, or do you have any special secret sauce on how you get your members or your staff to embrace that philosophy of evolving?
It's leadership. When you are humble enough to be doing this for this long and love every day of work, it's not work. It's, we're just creating experiences for others, whether it be our membership or our staff, even our internal staff. They're so excited about all the new things that they're learning. And I was pleasantly surprised to see that we have some wait staff that work in the culinary department. And, I think that's wonderful. They understand what it takes to put the dishes together and the ownership, everybody, that ownership trickles down. And when you lead by example, and the membership will just be looking forward to the next menu cycle. 3 months goes by so quick. We have all this other programming. We're doing all these other things. There's, a menu, just take 25, 30% of it, whatever it's not moving, if there is a dog or something, but keep your menu structure. This first menu that I put together here is really more about structure, because we have things that I believe that are fundamental to a food service program, right? That weren't there, so we could get into soups. I mean, what's the easiest appetizer to serve and the quickest? And what's the thing people love and embrace and can live on is soup. I've got 3 soups. I've got a signature chili. I got a bay scallop and roasted corn chowder. And then I have a gumbo of the day, which, we can make it into anything. If a membership, they want to just come in for some, bread service and soup, they can leave feeling good and they'll get out of there for under $10.
Yeah.
The shareable plates, I'd say friends that eat together stay together.
Yes.
Constantly trying to bring people together, right, with food. And so I got a whole section of shareable plates, and that is because people like to, socialize with, with cocktails, like eat and drink,
Eat
be
and
merry.
drink.
Yeah.
In your experience, Chef, do you? And once again, we're generalizing. Do you feel like club menus are overly complicated sometimes, or too simplistic sometimes? Like, would you say your menus and your food and the creations that you put together, would they be on the complicated side? Like, would it be intimidating for someone to follow your shoes and to try to kind of, meet that standard? Or do you kind of try to go the opposite direction, which is make it simple for your team? If you can have 6 ingredients in an item instead of 9, you try to go for 6, as opposed to showing off by having 9, 2 of them that no one can pronounce.
And it's easy to leave ingredients out when they ask you for stuff, like the LA Times.
Right.
Now, I write a menu that is not intimidating. I write a menu that people can read and understand, and then the wait staff can come in behind that and talk about it because they've all tried everything. And less is more. So it may seem simpler, but when you have a smaller window of error, like I've known for fish. Fish, I love everything about seafood, and it was really just domestic. I'd have fish flown in from Hawaii every day. There's a very small window of error, and so the products are the star, and what you do with them, less is more, really. But then it is a little more difficult because there's less room for error.
How do you balance you making a dish and your 2-month-old assistant sous chef that is just finding out where the staff room is, making the dish when you've got your 1 day off a week? Obviously training. I know the right answer, but the reality is that it's not easy to do. It's not easy to find staff. It's not easy to find talented staff. It's not easy to find staff that care attention to detail. It's not easy to find people that are passionate about consistency and quality and delivery. And sometimes, to have that same experience on a Monday night as opposed to a Friday night is a struggle for many operators. So once again, do you have any kind of magical secrets that you've been able to implement, I guess, that's brought you that, you don't win awards like you've won because you're making every dish every single day, 24 hours a day. When the critic shows up, who knows who's behind the hot table or whatever it might be. So
consistency is everything. Whether you're consistently great or consistently not so great, that's everything. It's all about consistency. I always have the Bible, and it's book that has, it has even viscosity of sauces. You can help others understand, mostly from just teaching them hands-on. But like you said, if you're not there, you got a picture of the dish, you got a picture of maybe some of the procedure points that are critical, like, HACCP, critical control points. That's the same thing as for cooking. Certain points, like when you make creme brulees, you gotta, there's a point there, you gotta pay special attention. But the Bible is really the book that has all the recipes, and it has the cost of goods. It has everything that anybody would need if you weren't there. But I love being there. I love being there and showing everybody. And I've always given feedback 10 times an hour with a 70% praise ratio, meaning I'm always looking for somebody doing something right.
Yeah.
And that environment, that culture is so important. That, is right up there with consistency. Culture may be number 2, maybe number 1. They're tied, because
so you're not a chef that throws knives. You're not the screaming chef in the back that's having a rant and a tantrum like we watch on television. That's not you.
That was the 70s. No, I worked for Erler. He was a maniac. He threw buckets, 5-gallon buckets of sauces, and tore off. I think they had a hockey team in Calgary in the ballroom, and Erler tore the doors off the banquet room. He was a maniac. I mean, he'd make you shake. My first day at work, I was finishing a risotto in a tilt skillet, right? Big one, probably 150 orders of risotto. And all I had to do was drop in a bag of peas, right? Just to finish it off. And here comes Erler walking by, and I pick up the bag of peas, and there was a hole in the bottom, and all the peas went out all over the floor. Do you think I gave up? No, I just worked harder every day.
Well, for any of us that are in the Western Canada or in food and beverage, I was a manager with Earl's Restaurants during 1986, and but also a little bit aware of the club business. And Chef Erler was famous, and there was a handful of others that were kind of the leaders of the pack, right? And I was very fortunate. I was not in the kitchen, but I learned under people like Chuck Curry, Chef Curry, many others in the Earl's chain and the restaurant side of it. And the lessons. The one thing I always take from my restaurant experience back then was the people that were passionate about food, like passionate about quality. It's one of the things it's the reason why that restaurant chain is so successful today, is because they're just a family that is committed to the quality and hot food hot and cold food cold, and to the experience, right? Both my kids are learning. My youngest son is right now, getting into the kitchen in a great environment, right? And like you said, those days are gone when you can treat people in a manner that doesn't promote their enjoyment and promote their learning. And so I want to just talk about that for a little bit, Chef. We know it's challenging finding staff in hospitality. Once again, depending on your market, depending on where you are, but I hear it all the time. I hear it from my clients. I hear it from our members about the difficulty of finding people to work in hospitality, in particular in the kitchen. Especially if they're just starting out and have to begin in the dish area or wherever it might be, or chopping vegetables. They're not to the level where they're running a kitchen. Do you have, once again, in your experience, obviously creating an environment where people are referring others, and you talked about someone coming from across the world to work for you. And I understand that when you have a reputation to a certain point, you're going to want people that want to grow in the food and beverage business. I'm sure you've had lots of people that have worked for you that have gone on and are now running their own kitchens, that are now running their own clubs, or they're almost, to that point. if I were to ask you, what are the 3 most important leadership skills in the kitchen, just to make it simple, do you have any kind of words of wisdom for those chefs that are trying to tackle a challenging market of finding, attracting, retaining great people in culinary?
I think it's going back to, the chefs that I worked with, and all the things that I learned. I took a little piece of everybody, and that's what made me. And without mentoring the next generation, like, I'm always looking for the young person that's going to mentor me. I'm only halfway there. Remember, I've only been doing this
Right.
50 years. I'm good for another 20. I tell you, have me on your show again. You'll see me. I'll be back. You really have to just embrace where people are coming from. And, we always said you leave your problems at the door when you come in. Well, it's really not like that anymore. You have to have some compassion,
Yeah.
understanding. You got to be flexible. It started with flexibility for people. And, honestly, it's an employee's market. So as an employer, I'm associated with every school in the, 150-mile radius. Like, I just brought on a really good guy. He was 25 years in the Army. His name is Dan, and he's fantastic. Friday night, he was putting out food. He just graduated from Helms College, and he called me up or reached out to me on LinkedIn and said, do you have anything for me? And I said, yeah, come on down, and showed him around, and he's fantastic. And thank you, Dan, for your service. And you're going to be serving a lot more.
Yeah, 100%. Well, do you have, we talk a little bit sometimes about silos, front of house, back of house. And once again, if look, when I walk into a club, I find more often silos of front of house, back of house than I find teams that are united together, rowing in the same direction, pulling on the same oar. I that's just the reality of it. So same thing, I guess. Do you have any tools, the tricks, and tricks is the wrong word. Do you have any ways that you diminish silos between front of house and back of house?
Well, I've always been proud about how I brought the front of the house and the back of the house together since the late 80s. There's no stainless dividing us, but I still learn. And moving down here to Georgia was a real eye-opener for me. And here I'm saying I usually don't even say I. It's not about me. It's about we. It's about we and what we're going to do for our clientele, membership, outside, whoever it is. The greatest thing, the greatest reward that we have in this business is the thanks that we get, the creating food or an event or anything, and people appreciating it. It's as simple as that's why we do it. And if you don't love it, I'm sorry, but you maybe want to do something else, because there are a lot of people that do love what we're doing. And, they're out there. So if you love what hospitality has, and we're blessed to be able to do what we're doing for others, giving back. I always say giving back.
Well, and I think also in the private club world in particular, and this applies to as well to daily fee or resorts, is that one of the cons about our business is that if Mr. Jones is unhappy about his soup, he's coming back tomorrow, and we got to turn that around. But one of the pros about that is that Mr. Jones is coming back tomorrow, is that we get a chance to develop relationships with our members and our guests. We get a chance to get feedback they, in my experience, 95% of them care. 5% of them are just constant complainers, but 95% of them are giving you feedback because they care, because they want their club to meet all the expectations that they have. And we get a chance from a service standpoint to constantly deliver that, to, find a new way to put on Santa's breakfast, or to find a new way to put on Mother's Day, or to find a new way to exceed their expectations with, something that's happening in the facility. And so I do think that's one of the great things about, like, when do you've worked in hotels, you've worked in, facilities, you've worked in high-end restaurants, you worked in clubs. Is that one of the things you love about the club side of it, compared to the anonymous side of hotels where, you might be preparing food, but, you don't really know who?
Yeah, the hotels, sometimes I feel like the hotels are more focused on efforts than results. I mean, I'd go in at 5 o'clock in the morning, I'd be done at 10. That was a normal day. And after opening Gaylord National, I said I'd never work in a hotel again. And clubs are really, really good. And Diana had a really good article about this. You have better resources, you have better benefits, you have better pay, you have better quality of life, and better, culture, typically in a kitchen and a club. It's not as strenuous. Restaurants, if you like to move fast and you want to, really be avant-garde and, do a lot of things, restaurants are where it's at. But you got to be in the right place. I live in Evans, Georgia. I'm surrounded by golf. Golf is where it's at. We got Sage Valley, we got Augusta National, we got some golf here that, look out. We got Belle Meade.
Yeah, how cool is that?
Yeah.
Speaking of members, and you talked about the revolving menu. I got a couple more in our time left. Got a couple more questions for you, but one of them is: do you have signature dishes? And if you do you change them out every 3 months, or do they stick with you? Because once again, we talk about when we talk about clubs and we talk about their brand and their story. We talk about the importance of having signature dishes and the importance of signature drinks, the importance of having something, whether it's you've got your own beehive in the back and you use that honey to make your apple pie and your beer. That's a signature program. Do you have some staples, some signature programs that stick with you menu to menu to menu?
The menu is comfort food. Very high quality comfort food, and very close to Thompson, Georgia. The relationships are just starting. We have many what do they say in the fire? You know what I mean. The features will be the things that I do that, like one of my dishes is, got a lot of traction up in DC for about 20 years. Chilean sea bass, right? With
picture of it. Looks unbelievable.
A horseradish crust and lobster mashed potatoes and a little beurre blanc. Super simple, but Chilean sea bass now is like $50 a pound, or maybe 60. I don't know. So we'll do that as a special. We're not going to put that on the menu. We got shepherd's pie with Dent Farms beef, which is a really cool. I start every menu with vessels. Like I find unique ways of serving it, and
love that. And
then I work my recipe into that. And so what you have is an eclectic. Like you'll come into the club and there'll be a 6-top, 8-top, whatever. Everybody orders all this different food, and it comes out. It looks like, wow, you're at some fancy restaurant in New York or Chicago. It's eclectic, and it's designed for that. it should be entertaining. It should be ooh and ahs, and the menu is very simple. It's under promise and over deliver. That's what we live by.
Yeah, you bet. Chef, last kind of question, unless we have a bit more time left, but Belle, Meade, you're obviously just gone in there. You've been there for a month. You're probably, you're probably in your 90-day plan. But if you were a general manager, golf course owner, COO, private club, executive chef, and you want to kind of revisit, reinvent, I guess, your food and beverage experience. Do you have any kind of key steps in your 90-day action plan, that you would advise a club to go through that is going to kind of help them get to a better experience at the end of that 90 days?
Get back to basics. We were talking about, whether they're doing too much or too little. You got to have a good foundation. The culinary arts is an arts and a science. It's art is good. It's fun, the fun side, but the science is the real serious part. And fundamental, the baseline, mother sauces, making stuff from scratch. It tastes better. It's funny how, when you do something maybe the easy way, it's not the right way. Do it. It's a craft. It's like, if you don't love doing it, maybe do it and you might love it again.
Well, and there's no easy way, is there? There's no easy way to get to that outcome. It's work, and that's why the great are separated from the good. That's just how it happens, and that's why the great gets separated as the good.
I was pushing lots of spatzel through a 200 perforated pan yesterday. It's just fun. You make your own spatzel, and you do all these things that you just know in your heart that your people are just gonna enjoy it, and that's what we are as chefs. That's what we do. But running the cost of goods, never had a problem. It was it was way easier before COVID. Now I feel for people struggling, if you can have a 90-day action plan, I would say if you got somebody that you can have walk through the kitchen, and I was at a Ritz-Carlton. I'd spent a week down in San Juan, and the GM stopped by and said, "How is everything?" I said, "Well, why don't you come see us tomorrow? Bring a paper and a pencil." And he came the next day and asked me how my visit was. And I told him everything everything, good and bad. And I went to check out, after a week, and they were like, "You're fine." They took care of my whole bill. Nice. Because of what I shared with them. So we should help each other. And, I love being in kitchens. I've been in many different kitchens, and, we could do it virtually,
Yeah. And speaking of which, Chef, I want to advise everyone to connect. Go to your website, chefkeller.kitchen, which is fantastic, by the way, a fantastic website. But if someone does want to reach out to you and pick your brain or get your feedback or have you come visit their kitchen one day, what's the best way for them to connect with you?
I'm mostly on LinkedIn. I feel it's the world's most professional networking site, and so Chef Duane Keller, and I have the website, and I have Facebook, Chef Duane Keller on Facebook. But just reach out.
I love it. Chef, thank you so much. I will take you up on it in 10 years. Let's reconnect, do another podcast, see where your journey is continuing to go. Thank you so much. Just some fantastic nuggets of wisdom and your experience, your journey. We could have gone on for another 2 hours, but really appreciate you joining the Gig podcast today. And ladies and gentlemen, I've no doubt that you've taken away a few bits of information that you can use to help your operation, to help your organization. And as always, thank you for joining us on today's live Q&A call. We'll have another one next month. And in the meantime, as always, we will see you on the inside.